Hello everyone. This is just a quick review for the test that's going to be next week. Now, the way my programming classes typically work is, actually, let me readjust something here. Double. Okay, well, we'll get to that in a second. Alright, the way my programming classes usually work is we almost always have a 10, a 20, and then a 30-point project. And then we have a test. Now, the exception is always the beginning, because the beginning we cover quite a bit of material. It's not a specific topic, but everything to get you ready to start writing programs. And that would be, that requires inputs, that requires print statements and variables. There's several topics we kind of have to go at the beginning. From this point on, we cover one topic at a time, because each topic can get fairly extensive depending on what we're talking about. So we won't be covering like a whole bunch of new stuff. We'll be adding in a new thing every single chapter, adding in one more new thing. And the new things we add in are a lot more complicated and make our current program a lot more complicated. So this very first test is a little different than the rest. We've done quite a few programs, and at this point we should have our 30-point project ready to go, or starting at this point, which means the next week will be the first test. Now the first test will cover everything we've talked about so far. So how to print things on the screen, how to take user input, how to do some basic math, that sort of thing. And I've also got some terms and stuff on it as well. The test will be laid out essentially at the start. There will be some terms. Then you'll have little snippets of code. And that code could be anything. But you need to be able to read the code. So for example, let's just open up something that's a little more pertinent to what we're doing here. I guess more variables is fine. Yeah, save it. Go ahead. Okay, so if I gave you this code here, right there, just that would be a snippet of code on the test. Number 1 equals 5, number 2 equals 10, number 3 equals number 1 plus number 2. See out the variable x is blah, 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 blah. Now, my question would be, or at least the question on the test would be, what is going to print on the screen when this finishes? What appears? Well, we got a 5, a 10, it adds those two together, it's 15. The variable x is 15 in this case, is what should appear on my screen, and that's what I would write. So in that part of the test, what I want is like you to be able to read that. Like if I look at that code, what is going to pop up on the screen? I don't need a description of every line. This line is defining a variable, and this line is defining a variable. This line is adding variables. I want the end result. This is going to put something on the screen. What's that going to be? And I will adjust it a little bit. So, and for this, you just need to be able to look at it. You don't need an IDE, you don't need to run anything. You just need to look at this code and say, it's going to do this, type into the box that you're going to see. And specifics is what I'm looking for. I don't want anything vague. It's going to print a statement in a variable. That's not telling me specifically what it's going to do. So you'll see several snippets of code like that. And the last will be an actual program. I will give you a little program, and I will say, hey, make this program. For that program, you can open up your project, you can Google, not Google, but copy paste whatever you need to do, and get it turned in. Now, typically, the test is going to be timed as well. You'll have an hour to complete it. Well, it'll vary a little bit on the test, but you'll have a set time limit, maybe not an hour, maybe a little more, depends. So don't sit there and think you're gonna, I'm gonna go look up a bunch of stuff. I'm gonna go grab my books, or I'm gonna do this. Since it's time, you need to know the answer before you get into it. Now again, the beginning, you're gonna have some terms. And I'm gonna talk about those terms right now. So, quick as we can, we have a bit, which is the smallest little way anything can be arranged on a computer. 0 or 1. It comes from the days where they had switches and vacuum tubes and things. Things were either on or off. That's where that comes from. A byte is a sequence of 8 of those. Usually you see like 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, that sort of thing. It's essentially just a letter, a character. A Boolean, of course, is true, false. A character is a single letter. A comment, we use the // Compiler is our program that takes our source code and converts it into something the computer can understand, machine language. Declaration and definition are kind of the same thing. When I declare something, I am declaring a variable, for example. I'm saying int number 1, int number 2. That is a declaration. A definition is a little bit the same for the most part. There's actually a lot of crossover there. Usually this is used for functions and methods and that type of thing. Let's see here. All right, back to where I was. I had to pause for a second. Anyway, declaration, definition. Definition can be used for variables and stuff. They're kind of used, I guess you can say, interchangeably. When I define a variable, it's int number. When I declare a variable, it's still int number. Floats are decimal numbers, but you usually go up to 7-ish decimals, whereas a double will go double that, usually about 15 decimals. For what we're doing, almost always we just go ahead and use doubles. We don't really have to worry about the difference between the two. IDE is, well, our Visual Studios or Eclipse or, Python has idle. Whatever program you're using, it has essentially all the setup you need to write code and then click a button and it will compile it. And the compiler, again, translates it so the machine understands it. An integer is a whole number. And then we have, of course, our errors. Logic error means that, well, there's nothing like overtly wrong, it's just not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And that's probably something that we did wrong. We added incorrectly. We, picked a different variable or something like that. Or maybe we just didn't understand how the math actually worked properly and thought it would say to do something it didn't. The source code is that code that we type out into Visual Studios or whatever IDE you're using. And a string is a set of characters. Bob, Fred, Jim. It could also be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as long as it's got quotes around it. Syntax error, usually this is where it underlines in red, or if it doesn't underline in red, when you run it, it tells you, hey, there are errors. Something's wrong, like syntax-wise. And of course, a variable designates a location in memory to store things. If I say int number, I am telling the program, I need an integer, and I'm going to call it number. I need you to reserve that space for me. So those would be your terms for the week. Now, that's roughly going to be your kind of review for the test. You got your terms right here. Now, I will take the terms down test week, so I would encourage you to watch this video and make your notes and everything you need. Know what all these terms are. If you listen to any of the videos, I've mentioned almost every single one of these terms already, so you should have a vague understanding of what they all are. But that's your walkthrough for the test. If you have any questions or comments or concerns or anything like that, feel free to ask me. Now, when you get to the test, there'll be some multiple choice questions, which will come from the terms, and maybe a little bit of matching. There will be the code, in which you have to write out what the code's roughly going to say. And then the programming assignment, where you're going to write a program and you'll attach it to the end of the test. Then you will submit the test. Now, don't freak out. I'll probably say this again next time, but it will only grade the multiple choice matching stuff. It won't grade any of the programming stuff. So if you get a 30 or 40 out of 100, don't freak out. I have to grade the rest of it manually. So just keep that in mind. That's your quick walkthrough for next week's test.